We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
Today on CityCast Boise. In a year of relentless political attacks on LGBTQ rights in Idaho, just existing as a trans or non-binary person can feel exhausting. But even in the face of cruel policies and loud attacks, there's a powerful movement happening towards connection, joy, and resilience. It's Tuesday, April 29th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Joining me today are Bonnie, Violet, and Pacey, co-founders of TransJoy Boise. Thank you both for joining me today.
Hi, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for having us.
Pacey, I want to jump right in with a question to you. How would you describe the temperature for transgender and non-binary people in Boise right now, especially after this last legislative session?
This legislative session was extremely aggressive and targeted at the LGBTQ community, but primarily at the trans community. It's already drastically changed the daily lives of trans people, especially if you think of things like HB 264, which is the public restrooms ban, basically. And now trans students are no longer able to use the restroom that aligns with their gender identity. And even the organizations that house these restrooms, they can be sued if someone sees someone using the quote unquote wrong bathroom. So everything right now just feels hyper scrutinized, and it's really scary.
Yeah, I mean, something that people don't even think of day to day. You know, if I'm out and about, I just walk into a restroom to use it. That's something that you have to be aware of, that the trans community has to think about doing, and what the implications of that might be for them.
Oh yeah, it's crazy because there are these things that you never really thought about before, with like where the business owners might align politically. And it's like, is this a safe establishment for me to even go to anymore? You know, you have to think about the restroom situation, and just, it's really exhausting to have to think about these things when we just want to live our normal lives.
And Pacey, do you think that there is a cultural shift happening in Idaho, either towards more solidarity with these laws and this rhetoric, or towards more polarization?
You know, I'd say that there's a major cultural shift happening right now. I mean, just from how it is at the 50-51 protests, right? You see that all of these people are realizing that everybody is suffering under the current administration, and more people are willing to kind of join forces together. But there are those really devout Trump followers that are digging in their heels, and they're getting really loud. And those are the people that are most concerning to me, because those are the ones that are more likely to be inciting violence and aggressive and harassing us on the streets.
Bonnie, Violet, why did you start the TransJoy podcast, and why now?
Yeah, I mean, we really felt like it was really important to stay connected with community, because most of us are scared. A lot of us are scared to leave our houses. We struggle with isolation and feeling and getting really detached from ourselves and people. And so the podcast, we really wanted to create a regular time that we could get together, connect with people, even if it's online or digitally, and kind of talk about some of the really difficult things that trans people struggle to talk about with people in their lives who are not trans or non-binary, because oftentimes they don't understand what we're going through, and oftentimes they'll try to either minimize, or they'll say, oh, it's not that bad, or it can just be really challenging for us to really feel supported in what we're going through. And I think sometimes it can also feel like I'm just weak, I'm just not good enough. And being able to hear other trans people talk about having the same challenges really just kind of helps everyone feel a little bit more like we're okay with where we're at, and that many of us are going through the same experience.
So it definitely sounds like as the rhetoric about trans people has built up, and as there has been more bills and legislation targeting trans people, that this was something you created to as kind of a respite, as kind of a space that was, I don't want to say safe space because that that instantly makes people, but truly a place where people understand what you're going through, where you know that people sharing that experience with you can coalesce or gather.
Yeah, especially I think the frequency of doing it once a week, doing it on video through YouTube, and then doing it audio was just ways of staying accessible and then being able to talk about what's really happening right now versus more broadly about things that are happening. We can talk specifically about what's going on with us now. And Pacey and I have such vast different perspectives on things. And so I think together we're able to kind of really highlight a lot of different ways that people are responding to what's happening, because not all trans and non-binary people are responding the same way to everything that's happening right now.
You actually led the Trans Pride March last September. Have you been working towards building a community for trans people within Boise for a while, or did that march impact at all your desire to create this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, without the march, I don't think it would have led to having the podcast. Prior to the march in September, the beginning of last year, I attempted to try to get a little bit more connected in community. At first, I was just a trans person trying to live as a trans person. And I felt really challenged by feeling supported by my community, having leaders. I really wanted other people doing things, but it just wasn't happening. And so I went to the Trans March in San Francisco, and it'd been such a powerful experience for me. And I was like, why can't Boise do that? And I had spent many, many months just locked up in my house, really struggling to leave anywhere unless it was a trans specific space, and was super, super isolated myself. So I needed the march just as much as I knew that the community needed it. And I knew that a lot of folks weren't going to be able to go. But I wanted a lot of people to show up who could, so that those who didn't make it could gain strength from that. I also hoped that we would be seen in other states around the country and maybe around the world as we are still, like, there are trans and non-binary people existing with joy in even Boise, Idaho, as part of the red state.
Mother's Day is coming up, and if you're still searching for a gift that's meaningful and might even make her cry those happy tears, let me save you some time. Get her an Aura digital picture frame. With Aura digital frames, you can preload before you gift with decades of family memories, so it's personal right out of the box. It plays live photos and up to 30-second videos with audio. And you can invite your whole family to contribute, so she's not just getting a frame, she's getting a living scrapbook from the people she loves most. Aura's been featured in hundreds of gift guides this year and named #1 digital frame by Wirecutter and Forbes. There's no subscription, no storage limits, and no complicated setup. Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. For a limited time, listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off, plus free shipping on their best-selling Carver mat frame. That's auraframes.com, promo code CityCast. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Pacey, what does trans joy look like in Boise in 2025?
I think, honestly, trans joy is resistance. In the current political climate, it seems like our very right to exist is being argued by the government. So living as authentically as possible is an act of rebellion. Trans joy is finding comfort in your community and being able to have fun and make art and love our trans experience and be able to relate to each other, because it's really difficult to go through this kind of alone. Because I know personally, going through this and being a constant target, not only from the government, but from just your neighborhood, is really daunting and isolating. So every opportunity that we have to get together and just kind of express joy, have fun, and laugh. I think laughter is so important right now is just monumental for us.
And what are some moments that have made you realize, like, yes, this is why we need trans joy community space in Boise?
Okay, my answer for this is it's kind of a negative one, but it highlighted to me why it's imperative that we have these spaces to focus on joy. I was in a hearing for the indecent exposure bill, and at the end of the hearing, when everyone was voting on it, one of the senators, a Republican senator, said that he wasn't going to be supporting this bill. And I thought that that was very odd because it's an anti-trans bill. This is something that they usually really go for. And he said his reasoning was he felt that he couldn't support a bill that targeted trans people because that would validate that trans men and trans women exist.
Wow.
And you could hear a pin drop in that room. And he said that he didn't feel that was the direction that Idaho should be going. And just that harsh realization that the hatred is so intense that we're just moving on straight to erasure. And we feel it. We can feel it, when you're walking through a store, when you're getting the looks. It's so harmful and you feel so small and lonely. So we have to have these opportunities to get together because there's just no other way to survive this.
What do you think that people misunderstand about what it means to be out or visible as a trans person right now?
I mean, I think the challenge is just all the layers of everything. A lot of people are having a difficulty with life, period, right now. Like housing is a challenge for anyone. Paying your bills is becoming more and more difficult, regardless of being trans or non-binary or being a person of color, and then you throw all those other intersections onto us. And then it's like we struggle even more with being able to, one, access the medical care that we need, access safe spaces to connect with one another. It's just, there's so many layers to it that I don't even think you really understand or can understand until you go through it. I think a lot of women know what it's like to be a woman in the world and the kind of vulnerabilities that are often there. And I think you have opportunities to navigate that, unfortunately, from a really young age. And, I'm transitioned later in life and I'm beginning to have a lot of that experience of, understanding the difference between being seen as a woman or a feminine person in the world versus a masculine or a man. And so I don't know. I just think there's just so many vulnerabilities, so much more vulnerabilities that are there that make it really difficult. You can't turn your transness off and on. So it's like 24/7. You can't just go to the grocery store. You can't go to coffee. You can't go to work without your transness being the first thing that's there all the time, whether you want it to be or not. And I think that's the hardest challenge because even when you want to just exist, and not your transness be the center of your existence, the world around you is constantly like pointing at it and poking at it and forcing you to really not lose sight of it.
And how do you navigate that pressure, that constant poking in your effort to both be authentic and representative, especially in a place where there aren't that many visible trans people?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've really had to be mindful about my consumption. And kind of balancing that idea of what do I need as a person? I'm a very reluctant trans leader or whatever. Like, I didn't necessarily want to do this. And in a lot of ways, I don't feel like I'm strong enough or I'm evolved enough or like really being able to stand in my transness enough to be in front of people. But I think that's also part of where we're all at. And if we wait until we're all like somebody's really great or we're really great before we allow ourselves to be visible and to come together as a community, then we're never going to get anywhere. And so I think, I don't know, I feel like it's gotten to the point where I have to do it in order for me to be okay with being a trans non-binary person here in Idaho.
Well, and you mentioned that isolation is something people can really struggle with in this area, where it's a more hostile environment to trans people and non-binary people. How are you helping folks to avoid that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we do have the podcast that happens weekly and people can access that whenever they need to. We also have like a weekly social support group. And we do like a monthly larger social support group kind of hangout space. These are places created by and for trans and non-binary people for us just to come and exist. Sometimes we've hosted a trans wedding. We've, just had food and hung out. We've held groups. We've, introduced people there are a lot of trans and non-binary people in the Treasure Valley in Boise that are doing really great things. And I feel like a lot of trans people are actually coming out a lot more and being a lot more visible. And I think that's what's so important is that we're able to exist in ways that help us feel more empowered and stronger within the community. And we often need to do that with other people. Yes, we need to dig deeper and we need to be able to find our own internal strength and comfort in difficult times. But we also need to be real in understanding how much we need people, trans, non-binary, and not, to help us, exist and to really find that joy.
Hey CityCast! Something I appreciate about the Cozy Earth Mother's Day sale is that they know motherhood looks different on everyone. So whether you're raising kids, dogs, or cane, all moms work hard and they deserve comfort. So let me tell you about these Cozy Earth sheets. They feel like cool water, in a sort of, is this the Ritz-Carlton or my own bedroom kind of way. The pajamas are what I imagine celebrity moms sleep in, buttery soft. You're looking for the right gift because the women who raised you feel like home. And they are going to love Cozy Earth bamboo pajamas, and I know this because it's 3:24 p.m. and I'm still wearing mine. To celebrate moms everywhere, Cozy Earth is supporting your favorite local podcast and giving our listeners a special promo. 45% off site-wide. This is a luxury brand, and that is a mind-blowing deal. Use Cozy Boise to take advantage of 45% off at CozyEarth.com.
Pacey, what's something that you wish more people understood about the toll of just existing as a trans person right now?
I think it's just the sheer injustice of it all, really. I mean, people are so multifaceted, and it is really dehumanizing to constantly be reduced down to a single trait. Honestly, I think that my transness is about as interesting as like the color of my eyes, right? There are things so much more important about me, my hopes, my dreams, my morals, my hobbies, all of these things. And to have people only make opinions based on that one thing, that I have no control over. And that's really exhausting. And just to repeat some of the things that Bonnie Violet said, I mean, life is really difficult right now. Our medication, our gender affirming care, we can't get through state insurance. And with our gender affirming care, the healthcare providers can just refuse to treat us if it goes against their beliefs. And that's really scary when, for instance, I was going to the pharmacy to pick up my testosterone, and there was a really mean woman that was almost to the point of refusing to give me my medication. And what do you do in that situation? It's mortifying. You just stand there and you know that no one's going to step in to help you because, they don't really feel it's their place either. And it's just this constant state of anxiety and fear because I don't know when I'm going to be harassed in public. And it's really scary. I was downtown and this really large man, his wife had to hold him back because he had been drinking. And finally he broke free and he came and got right in my face. And what do you do in that situation? I don't want to have to go to the gun range. I don't want to have to do, self-defense classes. I don't want to have to think about those things. And yet that's an everyday reality that we have to have in the back of our mind or we could be in danger.
So Pacey, you mentioned the pharmacy example. What kind of support does the trans community need most from allies right now?
I think that the best thing an ally can do right now is to defend us when we're not around. Because at the end of the day, as awful as it is to say, their voices are going to be heard more than my voice would be or Bonnie Violet's voice would be. So when you're in a group of your friends and you hear these ignorant takes or something that someone maybe heard on Fox News, whatever, right? Challenge it and say, I don't think that's true, or why do you believe that? because that's going to carry so much more weight. And being able to challenge these people might change their mind because, it isn't hatred, it's ignorance. And I say that it's this misinformation, right? I don't feel that a lot of these people are going around saying these things because they hate trans people. I think it's because they don't know. They haven't been exposed to trans people. They don't understand our reality. And it's easier to just live in an echo chamber. So if you can challenge those things, I think that would be really helpful and it could, spread some information. And on top of that, just, support us, read our books, watch our movies, just be there for us. I don't like it when people try and tell us like, oh, you're overreacting. I shouldn't have to justify my reaction to hatred to my friends and my family. That's not what you're there for. You're there to just listen and just be supportive.
So, Bonnie Violet, in your perspective, what kind of allyship is helpful in the moment and what kind of actions miss the mark?
I kind of feel like any and all action can be helpful in the long run. I have a lot of experience with allies wondering, is this my place? What do I do? I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to. And I think part of that I want to challenge allies who really want to show up for us to be uncomfortable, because I think a silent ally, somebody who doesn't acknowledge us as trans people and do not try to show up for us, even if they're clumsy about it, I think are more harmful to us than strangers or people that we don't know. So I'd really just challenge allies to be brave, as I hate that word because we hear that as trans people all the time. And I think that actually says a lot about the non-trans or non-binary person when they say that you're so brave to live in trans and non-binariness. And I would challenge that person to be brave and really confront some of that thinking and understanding that would say that we're brave. That you would think that was a nice thing to say. But I think also just and then being brave with maybe saying the wrong pronoun or asking a question that somebody doesn't want to answer or feels like is inappropriate. Like, we're only going to learn by our mistakes. And if you have a trans or non-binary person that's close to you, that is such a gift and such an opportunity for you to really learn. And for you could just play such a pivotal role in that person's life.
Thank you so much for bringing up that idea of being brave. I would like if we could just put that to rest, put that to sleep. Like, if you're telling somebody that they're brave for showing up as themselves, like, you're inherently saying something is wrong or different or broken about them, but look at they're showing up bravely. No, that's always been something that it grates. And I think people don't realize that. So thank you so much for highlighting that. Bonnie Violet, what does resilience look like today? And also, what would it take for trans people in Idaho to be able to move beyond resilience, to feel safe and rooted and free?
Yeah, I think resilience is another one of those backhanded compliments of being brave or something, I think what trans and non-binary people need to do in order to, I think, progress beyond that is that we have to become more than visible. I think we really have to become known. And to me, becoming known is actually just being in relationship with one another. You learn what makes us cry. You learn what makes us laugh. You learn that we're struggling to pay our bills. You learn that we're adjusting to this, that, or the other. And those are things that we do. And I think I want to really challenge trans and non-binary people to be honest with the people around them about what they're experiencing, and to have the people around trans and non-binary people create opportunity and space in which you can really become, get to know one another, in a mutual and, back and forth kind of way. I think sometimes we can be like the unicorn, we can be the project, we can be the person who, needs help. And we have a lot to contribute, to our own life and our own existence, but also the existence of people who are not trans or non-binary. And so I think being able to be approached and to approach one another with that same sort of mentality that we all can just kind of, yes, we all have our struggles and we all have our strengths. And how can we find ways to mutually come together that in a way that benefits all of us? And I think that's something we have to really figure out how to do right now, because there are so many marginalized groups that have always been under attack, who are very much under attack right now. There just happens to be a spotlight and a magnifying glass where we can clearly see the racism, the transphobia, the sexism, all of the isms that are tearing us apart. And we really need to come together right now. And I think it's just obvious. It's so obvious that that needs to happen right now. And now is the time.
Well, thank you, Pacey and Bonnie Violet. I really appreciate you taking the time to break this down and give us a little insight into what the trans non-binary experience in Boise is. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. This was great.
Yeah, thanks so much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, make sure and subscribe to our Hey Boise newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with a look at the effort to recall the Caldwell mayor and 4 city council members. Catch you then.